welcome everybody. Just wanted to say, it's been, 10, 11 days since the loss to RSL, and we've done a lot of reflection. And, obviously on the team side, the motivation, it always hurts, it sucks to, lose a playoff game at home, But in all of the, interviews, the exit interviews with the players and staff, I think that's going to be a good motivating factor for next season. My personal reflection about the state of the club and all of that, I'm grateful for all the support I get from these two gentlemen, from ownership. I'm grateful for the support that the fans gave us throughout the year. Look, it's been a rough couple of years with COVID and getting fans safely back in the building, so I appreciate all the efforts that the club has done and the fans have done to keep everybody safe. And I'm thankful to all of you guys. I mean, you guys come out and cover the team, not just the notable sites that I usually go to or, watch on Twitter, but, all of you guys do a great job, the camera guys in the back, of covering the club. So I'm appreciative for the turnout tonight or this afternoon, and just thankful that, we're going to continue. This club's a big club, and we've got big intentions, and we'll get back after it next year.
Thanks, Brian. Look, obviously not the ending we wanted to the season, but a number of positives. 60-point season. It's kind of hard to call a 60-point season a bad season. And our sustained success now, not just this year, but over a couple of years, has led to some individual recognition, and I want to note those guys. 3 guys in the best 11, second year in a row we've done that. So, the Raul and Yamar and JP this year, Nico Ladero, Jordan Morris last year. That's a real achievement. I mean, oftentimes even the best players in MLS maybe make the best 11 once or twice in their whole careers. So, particularly noteworthy there, Raul back-to-back. I don't know that anyone's ever done that before in club history. Alex isn't growling at me, so I think that's right. But so those are really cool things, and those are noteworthy achievements. Coach Schmetzer finishing third in the Coach of the Year voting, and so I think we're getting now some of that individual recognition for what's been sustained team success. But look, our standards are really high. We are disappointed to lose in the playoffs. I don't think we've lost in the first round in quite a long time either. And hopefully we're able to reload and get healthy and stay healthy next year. I think that's going to be a point of emphasis for us because we do have these talented players, and if we can keep everybody on the field, then I think we got a really good chance to go back and contend for another championship.
Yeah, for me, obviously my first year with the club, I want to say thanks to the entire club, but specifically these two guys for making it a good transition and a powerful transition for me. One thing not mentioned that I think shouldn't go unnoticed was the willingness of our staff and the success that our staff had integrating young players into the group and leading to not only the noticeable achievements on the field of young players, not noticed at the level of some of our veteran players from a league standard, but the development that our youth has had this year, and Wade Weber has done a fantastic job with a few guys that I'm sure you guys will be writing about soon. We've already signed Sam Adenarian up, who had I think 13 goals for Defiance this year, and there'll be a few more on the way. So compliments to Brian, to Wade, and the rest of the development staff on that.
To Wade and Mikey and all those guys.
All of
Yep,
them.
all
Yeah,
of them.
we can list them all for you in time.
We'll turn it over to you guys. Guys, can you pinpoint one reason why it went south down the stretch now that you've looked back and seen? I mean, maybe there's not one reason, but if there is, what's the fix for it coming into next year?
I've reflected on it. I don't know if it was one singular component, but look, everybody kind of saw the product on the field. I didn't think we were in full cohesion. I think I tried to address that and kind of talk myself into it and talk the players into it. It's going to be hard, but we can do this. You're all talented guys. But the challenges of, switching formations in the beginning, And part of the reason for that was, we lost Jordan Morris and, we lost Nico, and we decided we had these good parts, Alex and Brad and, knew who was a third center back. And we changed our formation, and it worked at the beginning of the year. And then towards the end of the year, I think teams started to figure us out a little bit, figured out how we played. Then we were bringing Jordan back, which is obviously a big, massive part of our success over the years. And we just couldn't really find that rhythm with his return, where's his best position in our little house shape, Raul's injury, Nico's injury. I think all of those things kind of caught up to us as the season progressed. And I don't want to use that as an excuse, because to Craig's point, we had 5 teenagers on the field and we beat Austin. So we needed the next guy up mantra, and we had good, talented players, Benazet, Montero, Shane, Jimmy Madranda. We had good guys that were part of the middle part of the roster that played significant minutes for us and gave us a lot of success. Josh Atencio, Danny Leyva, some of the young kids. So I think overall, it wasn't one component, but joining everybody together in a cohesive fashion, we just didn't make it.
For any of you, perhaps Garth, with CONCACAF Champions League being part of next year, is it more important to keep this core group together, or to go out there and get perhaps players or more talent in positions where you may need them?
Look, I think we're going to err on the side of stability, but we have a number of free agents. So what's happening in the next couple of weeks is we'll talk to those free agents, and some of those guys are out of contract, and we'll figure out who wants to come back and who doesn't, and that's a work in progress. And once we get through that, then I think we'll have a better feel for how many guys we have. But I think as of today, with Sam signing, I think we have 21 guys signed, something like that. We have a couple more in the works that I would say we're getting closer on. So I actually think, Nico, we're going to wind up with something like 25 at least to start, which would be the most we've had going into a preseason in quite a while. I anticipate something next year that looks closer to a 30-man roster. I don't think I've had a 30-man roster in my career at any point. But what's happening is the depth of the young talent is such that it's pushing through, and I think we're going to have an opportunity to sign a couple more of these young guys. Obviously, we got to see how that plays out. But if we do, I think we're going to have more bodies, which hopefully helps us then in the beginning of the season as we try to ramp up, and we ramp up the group as a whole in a safe, sustainable manner. Because what we don't want to do is spend the first 3 or 4 weeks and spike in anticipation of that first Champions League game, and then potentially crash afterwards. I think what we want to have is a nice, slow, steady build, and we're working with everybody, medical, performance, coaching, all of us are on the same page about this, and we'll get it figured out.
Circling back, you said that you had to talk to the free agents and that kind of thing. Do you have more space this year than you have in the past? Like, after the 2020 MLS Cup loss, there were a lot of harsh cuts due to salary cap concerns. How tight are you against that cap this year? I know you'll never give exact numbers, but generally.
Yeah, look, it's still COVID. So this is next year will be the 3rd year of a flat cap. So 20, 21, 22, same cap number. So then we get $100,000 more in GAM for those of you guys who want to get in the weeds. But it's effectively, so as you can imagine, the snowball, which starts with flat cap in year 1 and 2, just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So we do not have a lot of space, but what we've seen in the market is that nobody really has much space at this point. We have more or less tapped out the system in terms of how much, because literally every player in the league has, on average, a 5% increase, right? So that's every player in the league on every team. So we're now in year 3, a 5% on top of 5% with a flat cap. It doesn't take a mathematician to work out that's going to put downward pressure in terms of building teams. And it's also going to push teams, particularly good teams, towards stability and continuity. Because anytime you're going out to get a new player, you have an acquisition cost on top of the salary. Whereas with your existing players, if you have good players, if you pay just the salary if you're able to retain them. And again, hopefully we've had a good culture here for a long time as well. And what's one of the things that I really noticed about this group is this group liked each other. They really got along pretty well. And hopefully that's an indication that some of these guys will choose to come back.
Brian, I think
slow start, but then building through the year and then getting really good right before the playoffs. Did that, I can't remember if it was 13 or 14 game run to start the season, did that change the dynamic? Did you feel that, or was it simply teams starting to figure out the system that you were playing and ways to attack that?
Well, bringing up one of my mentors, Jimmy Gabriel, he always said that your luck kind of evens out over the course of a full season. And so sometimes when you start off unlucky, you end up lucky at the end and vice versa. I don't know if that's the scientific answer to your question, but I do know that the start of the season is something that we're proud of. I think as an organization, setting a record is always a good thing, but it certainly didn't help us at the end of the year. And what we'll try and do is we'll try and, again, the reflection of the coaching staff is still going on. I've had my guys here 3 times this week. We'll meet again next week. Just about what did we learn in that 13-game streak? What did we do well? Did we catch teams off guard? Did we, have 2 formations instead of 1? Because towards the end of the year when Jordan came back, we did kick around going back to our 4-2-3-1. So we're discussing all those things to make sure we don't become predictable. And as the season progresses, teams can kind of hone in on what our strengths and weaknesses are and use that in their tactical play against us.
Brian, you talked earlier this year about how the conversations to switch to the 3 at the back started early in the last offseason after the Columbus loss. You just mentioned kind of the being able to play in multiple formations. Is that something that you're kind of already discussing and trying to, kind of implement into the 2022 lineups?
Yeah, we are discussing it. I mean, you don't want to have too much confusion. I mean, soccer is a simple game. You want to kind of have a system in place. But look, there's been years past where we've, maybe played away from home, a little more conservative nature or lineup and stuff like that. We've been pretty steady with our road record, so why does it need to change? I mean, we go through a lot of reflection and ask ourselves a lot of questions about how the team is going to shake out for next season. Now, I'm relying on these guys to help us with that. The players that we sign, that Garth and Craig identify and sign, will have some bearing on how we end up playing. So let's just say, to Garth's point, we keep the majority of the team. And we can keep Alex and Brad and Nuhu and some of the other guys, Kellen, whoever we can keep. Maybe it still lends itself to having wingbacks. But if that's not the case, and Jordan comes, and look, I know we need to see Chu a little bit more. I need to do a better job of getting him on the field to see what we have there. And, maybe we go back to 4-2-3-1 with out-and-out wingers.
Looking back, what was the issue in terms of not getting Chu on the field more? What were you looking back?
Well, again, our lineup didn't, it just wasn't conducive to his skill set. I mean, when you played that house short formation, most of the width came from your wingbacks. And so it was just he's a nice kid, worked hard, good prospect for the club. But, that formation really didn't suit him. The times he was successful was when we changed, late in the game when we were chasing it to 4-3-2-1. That's when you saw him come on the field.
What can you say about some of the players that were either didn't have their options picked up or free agents, like Alex Roldan, Colin Rowe, those players specifically, but what can you say about their status going forward?
With Alex specifically, we've issued a bona fide offer, so he's under club control. So he's not free. But all the rest, I think, without exception, Jeremiah, are all ongoing conversations. Now, Nico obviously posted a really nice message and said goodbye to everybody. Yesterday, I had talked to his agent in the morning, and so on that one, I would say I'm not optimistic. But it was a very cordial conversation. I think we had a great experience with Nico. He did really well for us. We were grateful for his contribution. And we wish him all the best. I mean, I think he's more likely than not, from what I understand, to stay in MLS. So hopefully he'll get another club and be able to continue with his career. And we wish him well.
Garth, you have done this so much. You probably understand that sometimes the option on the contract sometimes rubs the player the wrong way. How do you deal with that? And going into perhaps Raul's negotiation, how is that going so far?
Look, we've had Raul's a great player. Let me start there. Again, back-to-back best 11s. He has been an integral part to our success going back since we signed him in 2018. You know, we were the best team in MLS history the back half of 18 after Raul's signing, win the title in 19. Obviously just missed in 20, and then he got a 60-point season this year. So he's been a big part of our success over a long period of time. And look, we'll work together. The conversations with Raul, conversations with his agent have all been cordial, at least from my perspective. So that's all you can hope for, and you have productive conversations. And certainly we're interested in getting a long-term deal with a player who's been a big part of our success. And if he feels the same way, then we'll get something done. And you know, worst case, he's under contract for next year, and you know, then we'll go forward. And if we have to solve something for 2023, we will. But to be clear, that's not our preference. Our preference is to try to work out a deal with Raul to keep him here with the Sounders long term.
How do you balance that part of, you know, a player who you want to give him for what he's earned, and then maybe not overpaying for the player? Like, how do you balance that whenever a player just has a certain amount and you're trying?
Yeah, look, I'm not going to get into contract negotiations in the media here or anything like that, so I got to have respect for Raul, and we'll keep our conversations private. But again, just to repeat, we've had only cordial conversations. I literally spoke to him, I think, 2 days ago. Spoke to his agent this week as well. His agent came up to visit us during the season, came to see me and Craig, and nice guy. Again, as much as I can tell you, this is a relationship-based business, and so far everything's been very cordial, very professional, and again, we'll work together to try to get a good resolution for everybody.
Both Raul and Nico have been very important pieces for you guys for a while. Both of them now into their 30s, and Nico having a tough year with injuries. How does sort of the stage of their career impact how you look at the rest of the roster? You talked a lot about the stability, maybe just with the market trends, but how does that impact your thinking in terms of maximizing their kind of competitive window here?
Look, this is something we planned for literally 5 years, right? I mean, when we ramped up the player development spend in 2016, because we signed Nico in 2016, we signed Raul in 18, and it's just math, right? You can get out and say, all right, when do they turn 30? When do they turn 31? All right, when are we going to need these guys? We said, all right, we got a 5-year runway if we can get it up to speed. And as Craig emphasized, we broke through this year. Now, are we where we want to be? Of course not. We want to get guys that are in everyday starters, and then hopefully get them to the next level of even more impactful than that. But we got it. A.B. Sissoko, Danny Leyva, Josh Atencio. Without hesitation, coach was putting them into situations throughout the season, on the road, at home, different lineups, different formations. They were part of what we term our useful squad. It's a statistical measure of how we use guys that play regularly within our team. So, and to put 3 of those kids in 1 year is really good. Again, now do we want to increase the overall youth player minutes? Do we want to find a way to get Leo Chu on the field, things like that? Again, of course, we can always try to work and improve, but we're really encouraged by that. And the reason we're encouraged by that, Matt, is because one of the things that we're going to look at now as these guys get into, because it's not just Nico and Raul, right? JP is 30 years old. Yamar's 30 years old. Steph Fry's 30 years old. So we have these elite players. Some of these guys, the best at their positions in the league maybe, but they're hitting a more advanced age. And so I think what it becomes then is a little bit more of a balance, where we say, hey, maybe for a road trip here or there, maybe something is. And again, to be clear, those are going to be coaches' decisions, and we're going to try to win every competition we enter. Nothing is changing about the Sounders' philosophy. What I'm saying is the nuances around the edges. So as we have these young guys come up, these are guys that can take minutes and take some of the load, some of the wear and tear off of our older elite players. And over the course of a season, hopefully we can get that rhythm that we need so the team remains successful and we put ourselves in best position to win championships. And
Hang on, let me just piggyback on Matt's thing, just from a soccer perspective, Matt. So Garth will take care of the roster build, and Craig the roster build, the young kids, all of that. But look, there's also additional things you can do to lengthen careers. It's about playing time, yes, some of the young guys getting minutes. We have a compressed schedule, the World Cup coming up, all of that, but also the training habits. So we do a lot of research and thought process about how we train, why we train. So Chris Cornish and Sean, they take care of a lot of that analysis. We do the eye test. We talk to them. Hey, Craig, how you doing today? And stuff like that. But you can modify training habits as well to get the older players to prolong their careers as well. So we're trying to cover all the bases there to keep this group for as long as we can. And then I know this, again, it's a big club. We'll always sign good players.
And look, I love that Coach jumped in there because this is a great example, right, Matt? Like this solution here is a holistic one. So it's with performance, it's with medical, it's with coaching, it's with front office, and it's everybody on the same page. And look, that's one of the, I feel like we're just talking in cliches now, but again, 13 years in a row in the playoffs, 2 coaches, 2 general managers. The one thing we got is stability. And so we're able to sit down and have some pretty good conversations and to pick a direction for the organization and have everybody subscribe to that. And then we all kind of work in our lanes to modify here and there along the way and hopefully wind up with the best possible outcome.
So you guys are, I mean, you answered almost all the questions I have, and I want to go back to the younger guys, because you mentioned they got some playing time. Where does that transition start? When do you kind of move it over, and how do you know when to do that? Because you're in win now mode, obviously, but, and younger players make mistakes when they're on the pitch sometimes. So how do you balance that, Brian?
Look, I can start, and maybe Craig can give his experience at RSL, because there's different ways of doing things. And look, youth development is such a big issue, big hot topic. It works differently at RSL versus Southern California versus Texas versus New York. It's all different. What I would say, and one of my favorite books is Boys in the Boat. I mean, it's about the Pacific Northwest. It's about the hardy, the UW's going to have a big game this weekend, I think. It's about being out in the rain and the weather, and you fight, there's adversity, and those are some of the things that I'd like to instill into some of the young players that come into this club. We talk about the culture of winning in this club, but then there's a ton of layers underneath that. How do you win? Okay, why do you win? What are we playing for? What's the objective? How do we do things? We're constantly striving. Even at the younger ages, when we go through with the academy guys, okay, how do we make this crop of players better? What are the standards we're setting at the club, at the first team level, at Defiance, at the academy levels? Those are all high standards. And it's up to us as coaches to kind of identify the talent, train the talent properly, without risking a 14 or 15-year-old to injury or anything like that. And then getting them to perform on the field is certainly that last step. We had some breakthroughs. Josh started the season as a starter in this club. AB played significant minutes, and Danny Leyva, as Garth mentioned. But there's other guys in the pipeline that the first team staff really like. So you guys might see some of those guys next season play more minutes.
Yeah, and again, youth development, Brian's spot on, and it's different at every club. And, here we want to win, but we also want to integrate youth players. And I think the staff did a really good job of introducing young players into a winning team, into a winning culture. It's not just throw 1,000 darts at the board and see if one lands in the right spot. It's integrating youth to make them successful, putting them in positions to be successful. And I think our first team staff did a wonderful job of that this year. Austin was a lot of darts thrown at the board, and they landed in the right spot.
They came through, yeah.
Yeah, but other than Austin, you saw one young player in, 2 young players in, surrounded by a veteran core. And really it's building a system and a structure that allows players to be successful when they're introduced, so that the confidence builds and the quality builds, not only on the field for the individual, but in the locker room with the veteran players. They need to see young players being successful as well in order to continue that culture. And I think the first team staff did a really, really solid job this year of building that culture. And we have some great leaders in that locker room, some veteran players that spend a lot of time and a lot of energy with young players, and that does not go unnoticed by the 3 of us.
Craig, speaking of that academy and the Tacoma Defiance, how can the change from USL to this development league, how much can that help? And will you have a big part of handling that?
Well, we all will have a big part of it, along with a lot of guys you don't see up here. But, it's development. And regardless of name and title of league and teams and everything like that, it's development. And, Brian touched on it. The point is to develop these young men in our culture, in the elements, and really get their buy-in and set progression plans that are appropriate for individuals, not a blanket statement that each player has the same experience. We don't expect that, and we don't want that. And so the continuation of development won't change, regardless of any of the other elements that might.
Great.
and also Brian, how important is the off-season in terms of development? Because the young guys that were last year, they have to get that now they're no longer young, so to speak, and then the young guys now. So how important is that from off the field and then on the field, X's and O's, Brian?
I'm gonna let you.
Well, okay, so on and off the field. Off the field, Sean and Megan, we have a new strength person that's super great at what she does. All the players, all the young players and the senior players have off-season workout plans that we want them to stick to. Obviously, they need a little bit of a break, you know, and unfortunately, you know, like Christian and Jordan getting called in, they might not get as much a break and, you know, all of that sort of stuff. We always try and do a good job of monitoring what the players do in the off-season. And it's not just me watching their Instagram accounts. We have people that actually, their jobs are to make sure that when the young players come back, that they followed the plan. The expectations for a young player, yeah, they're still young. They need help. They need growth. You know, we'll take Reed Baker-Whitting for an example. You know, Reed's a tall kid. He's still growing. And so how does his strength program different from, you know, say Yaimar's or JP's that's going back to Brazil a little bit with his family? So all of those things we take into consideration, Maz, to make sure that each player gets what he needs to make sure that they come back ready to go.
Mentally, with big clubs, I mean, there's a discussion in terms of them, it's their time now, as opposed to always staying young. Like, when do you have that discussion, like, this is your season, it's time for you to take that next leap?
You're talking about in the off-season or during the?
I'm sorry, it's a convoluted question. What I'm
Okay.
trying to ask is this, in terms of the youth development, if I had a good year, year one, next year, having that discussion that, look, you're no longer young anymore. Our expectation is for you to be a starter and make a difference. as
Okay.
a local MLS.
Let me answer that a little bit because I don't know if I answered your question quite good enough. Look, this club has always had massive expectations, good success, and the build was a little bit different in our early years. I mean, we had more senior players, and it was hard, really hard for guys to kind of break into a team that had maybe 14, 15 senior players. And Josh accomplished that this year. And we're going to try and get more people to accomplish that this year. I haven't had the conversation when Josh left. It wasn't, okay, Josh, next year is your year. It's, Josh, what did you do well this year? What can you improve on? Give me some feedback. Let me give you some feedback. And then he goes to the assistant coaches and he gives the assistant coaches some feedback. And then he'll go to the strength guys. And so it's, again, a holistic approach to get our athletes to get all the information, all the questions answered. I wouldn't put okay, next year you're going to have to be the starter. They can set goals with their individual development plans, which is what they do. And internally, I'm sure some of the young guys are thinking, yeah, I really want to be a starter on this team because this is such a great place to play. But I would never put that pressure on a young player.
One of my responsibilities is to add the details to that. So in talking to the first team staff and interacting with our strength and performance coaches, taking the very specific moments on the field and characteristics of a lot of our young players and introducing those back to our sports performance staff so these off-season workouts and expectations can be met physically in terms of development within the gym or even from a fitness standpoint for some of our young guys, trying to increase their fitness on field so they can compete for a longer period of time, even though they might not physically and muscularly be at the level of some of these grown men. So there's a lot of elements that are going on peripherally, and we're taking that information from the first team staff's office, and we're trying to extrapolate and really help these guys grow, again, without putting a specific timeline or pressure on a young man at a teenage, years. They already have a lot of expectation on them being under the microscope of a big club like this. So, again, giving them all the support we can to give them enough information to go be successful and learn on their own how to continue to evolve and grow with the resources that we have at the club.
Brian, would you have, I guess based on your comment, would you have preferred that Christian and Jordan not gone to national team camp?
No, I'm happy for them. I absolutely want them involved with the national team. It would be a big honor for a couple of our players to make the final roster for the World Cup. We always want to try and be supportive of our players that play for their respective national teams, all of them. Look, if you're asking me that question, I personally think those two guys should be involved. I mean, that's Greg's final decision, but I hope they are.
What's the next step for Jordan after getting back to the point of, playing 90 minutes in the playoff game?
Well, for him, it's just getting back and, back into a good rhythm. After you're off, for, 10 months, you're not in top form. It's unrealistic to expect Jordan to be in top form. So he's got a little bit more of a runway. What I would say, again, in the meetings that we had with Jordan individually after the year, he's kind of fired up because he had to sit so long, and then he just got a taste of it with us. That's why it's unfortunate we didn't extend our season a little bit longer. So he's actually looking forward to this camp in December, and then the January camp. Hopefully he gets selected there as well to kind of ramp up for hopefully what is a productive 2022 for him.
Going back a few minutes ago, we were talking about managing minutes of older players, potentially next year. And Garth, we talked every single week about the injury situation for this team and making sure that they're healthy for the playoffs, healthy for the playoffs, right? Based on what happened last week and not having guys healthy for the playoffs, does it change at all the way you manage injuries next year in terms of the way you think about that, in terms of the way you plan it out, or do you kind of just look at it as it's just unlucky at the wrong moments here at the end?
I'm an objective evidence guy, Jackson, because we do talk every week, and look, there's always some element of luck to injuries, sure, but you try to control everything you can control, and that's the deep dive we're doing right now. Are there things that we haven't thought of? Are there things that we haven't emphasized? Are there things that we can kind of collectively focus our attention on to really make that North Star injury prevention for next year? I mean, looking at the makeup of our roster and saying, if we're healthy, we believe we can be successful. So really making that a really top priority for the club, and hopefully that with that point of emphasis, again, it's a nuance. It's not a change of direction. It's not some new concept. It's working holistically across departments in the club to get everybody on board, players and staff, with this idea that we have a lot of good players, and so if we get those good players in the big games, then we should do pretty well more often than not, and I think that's not a particularly breathtaking statement to make. So it's just a little bit common sense is what I would say, Jackson.
Yeah, you mentioned the holistic approach, and this is for you guys as well. Having other voices and new voices in the front office and bringing those new ideas, right? How do those conversations go in trying to find those new ways to make sure the team is healthy when the team needs to be healthy? I'm not sure who. I mean, as for Brian, having a new assistant coach, for example, what can Freddie Juarez add to those conversations?
Yeah, look, Freddie has a lot of experience being a head coach in MLS, but I wouldn't say that Freddie is going to make medical decisions for us, and nor do I make medical decisions for us. Unfortunately, for coaches, we sometimes have the final say, but I take input from Chris Cornish and his staff, from our doctors, and we use our experiences as coaches and sometimes former players, and then you actually talk to the player themselves. And so it's a little bit, I'm not sure we could make it absolutely black and white, but to Garth's point, I think clubs all over the world are always trying to keep their players on the field. That injury prevention has become such a massive deal in the EPL, Bundesliga, our league. That's where games are won and lost. You need your money guys there at the end of the year for the playoffs. What I would say is we're always looking to fine-tune things, but there are certain things that are, look, Jordan's injury, knee injuries, sometimes skeletal injuries are out of your control. It's the muscular injuries that we have done, I believe, as a club, a good job of drilling down on best practices to limit the amount of muscular injuries throughout the course of the year. And I believe our trend, it's been going in a positive fashion. We've had less muscular injuries, but unfortunately this year we just had a bunch of significant, knees. Will Bruin, Steph, all of those guys. It was all knee or ankle or joint injuries.
What is the status of filling up the coaching staff? Or is it filled out?
It might be. You never know. We worked well at the end of the year, Freddie, Preki and I and Tommy. There still is an opening on the staff, and we will, review that as the preseason gets planned, and we're working on it.
Garth, you referenced the importance of just cohesion among the staff. And you guys have lost some important pieces behind the scenes between the coaches, and I know Robbie's been a big voice for a while. How concerning is that to you, just kind of losing some of those pieces given where you guys are at? As much continuity as you've had on the field, it seems like behind the scenes there's been a little bit of a churn.
Yeah, look, and what I would say is again, a lot of it's COVID. Again, when you have a run like we've had, since 2016, your best players and your best staff are gonna go on to bigger opportunities. I mean, look at the opportunities these guys are getting. I mean, Gonzalo Pineda, head coach, Atlanta United; Chris Henderson, sporting director, CSO for Inter Miami. These are not small jobs that these guys are going to. Mark Nichols, technical director, Charlotte. Chris Little joining the first team staff from Colorado. We've had a little bit of turnover in the performance department as well. But our man Dave Tenney, going to run Austin as another example, and Damian Roden was running Minnesota this year. So, all these guys, all these talented guys are going on, and we haven't even touched on Robbie, right? So Robbie's going to go on to another opportunity as well. So, and our job is to, as those things happen, and so. To answer your question, Matt, a bunch of that got pushed back because of COVID, and so we had a bunch of guys leave kind of, it feels like, all at once, but I honestly think it was really a reflection of kind of 2 or 3 years of kind of pent-up market demand, and then it kind of broke through as we got through the pandemic. And then, obviously Jimmy Traore leaving and going to coach in Denmark as well. So, those guys are really good guys. There's always going to be a demand for good guys. I look at it as a really good thing for the club that we have people that are in demand that are going on and getting promoted to jobs in other clubs. And then we replace it with great people. I mean, Craig Waibel's been amazing. Stepped in, and again, we talk about continuity, and Chris Henderson was in that role for 12 years. That is tough to step into. And Weibs hasn't missed a beat. I mean, he stepped right in. I mean, somehow he's willed the UW Huskies into the Elite Eight. But he's helped us with our integration of our young players. He helped us with our player signings. I mean, a number of areas across the board, and just culturally, Craig has been a great fit. He's been a great fit with Brian. He's been a great fit with Wade. We talked about bringing guys in to build bridges, and so again, when you talk about those holistic solutions, you're gonna have individuals that leave, but if you build the organization the right way, with bridges in between departments and without silos or bubbles, then probably over time, you're going to have bumps inevitably here and there. Robbie's literally the best I've ever seen at what he does. So does the next guy going to be that? I mean, that's kind of unrealistic to say we're going to get a guy as good as Robbie. But honestly, one of the things we're looking at is, do you go with a slightly different structure between video analysis and data analysis and sports science, and maybe you can make a department that is greater than the sum of its parts, and so you can simulate Robbie's abilities through some different tools and some different folks. And so, look, that's my job, right? Like, you can kind of see, this is what I enjoy. I mean, my job is to build organizations and to build sustainable organizations, and as folks leave, then hopefully we have a really good, really diligent interview process, and we'll replace them with more talented people. And again, the thing for us is it's a virtuous cycle. I mean, every time one of our guys goes on and takes a bigger job, our talent pool just gets a little bit better for the next position that we have to fill.
I would tack on to that, Seattle's a pretty great place to live. This is a pretty great organization to work for. And to your point, there's no shortage of candidates that want to come and work for the club. There's always a big pool of candidates because of Seattle, the Northwest, the sustained success of this organization. We get a lot of candidates.
Brian, when Garth initially brought Javier Arriaga, he was a little bit of a young prospect for a good defensive pillar in this franchise. He's going on his 4th year, going in with the most minutes he's played, probably his best season. What have you seen out of him in terms of growth over the time he's been here?
Well, very good growth, and he's actually coming into, if you think last year was good, he's coming into the prime of his career. So at age 27, sometimes center backs, they mature a little bit later in life. I'm not calling you guys old.
That's fair.
But they progress, and they mature, and they have all this seasoning, the experience, the kind look, let's be honest. I mean, Javi was, when he was a little younger, he was aggressive. And, you know, there's sometimes fouls attached to that and everything, which isn't a bad starting point, because I like aggressive defenders. I like guys that aren't afraid to mix it up sometimes. Notably, the 2019 semifinal against LAFC, he put that shoulder tackle that set the tone for that game, okay? So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but you've seen he smoothed the edges a little bit. And he's gained a little bit more experience. And again, I think he was one of the benefactors of going to a three-man back line. You know, because he could stand in the middle there and kind of dictate how we played out of the back, and the tempo, and his passing was, you know, magnified by the place that he played in the back line. Whereas Yaimar and Nuhu and Shane, they were more the aggressive, attacking defenders. And so it worked for him. So we have high expectations for Javi to continue his development here at the club.
Do you expect to have the flexibility to add some more U22 players, like the U22 initiative players?
I think the structure we're going to look at, Jeremiah, just again, this is roster rule minutia stuff, but where you keep that third DP spot as a tammable DP spot or a young designated player slot, such that you have the ability to add if you want to. One of the things, if you look around the league, it's not that those U22 spots are not being used just to sign foreign young players, but they've also been used to add talented American young players. And so if you look at, again, our player development system and the idea behind it, it could be that, certainly I think some of those kids will develop and we may be able to sell them abroad, but there are going to be other ones that we might choose to retain. And those spots can be used for those players as well. So we're just going to try to maintain max flexibility there. But I think going forward, maintaining the structure is critical, to have two full DPs, one tammable or young DP, so that allows us that flexibility then to have up to 3 young DPs, then allows us to mix and match a little bit as well.
Speaking of which, how close are you, or how important is it for you to start selling players abroad in order to sort of open up that pipeline and to create that marketplace?
Look, this is one where MLS really works as a single entity. It is the market. I was just on a call yesterday morning with sporting directors from Europe, and we get together every once in a while with the American guys and some of the European guys. And, the European guys had a bunch of metrics that kind of to show us what they're tracking of American players. And they don't necessarily break it out into Seattle Sounders young players. They break it out into MLS young players and the success. So when you have a Brendan Aronson that goes over and does really well, when you have a McKennie, when you have a Pulisic, there is an awareness out there that this is potentially a golden generation of American players. And I chuckle a little bit at that, because I think what it is, in fact, is the beginning of a tidal wave. I think that, yes, I do believe this is arguably the most talented generation we've had, but it's also the product of 10 years of sustained investment in this space. You've seen all the things that MLS has done, starting MLS Next, potentially starting an MLS run entity for that in-between space going forward. And I think there's a whole bunch of exciting dynamic things happening league-wide. And so when those players, Dallas has sold 3 or 4 players, obviously, Cannon and Tessman and on and on. That helps everybody. So I don't think we have to set the market, Jeremiah, but it is something for sure that we are attuned to, and that we want to participate in as part of being in that global marketplace.
COVID's obviously impacted scouting, recruiting overseas. With all of the new variants and all of the things that are going on, how long do you anticipate that it's going to impact your ability to really do some deep dive scouting as you did before the virus kind of presented?
I love that question, Mickey, because part of what it is the same answer that it is for everybody in tech and everybody in Seattle. I don't think we're going to go back to the old model. I don't think we're going to go back to trying to cover 22 countries and send somebody on the ground there to watch for one game. We've gotten super into just huge amounts of video analysis. We really have a different level, I would say, now of video capability, and we're pairing it much more now with data analysis. So every year, the data that you get out of South America, for example, gets a little bit more sophisticated. You talk about event data and tracking data. There's 2 different kinds of data. We're now starting to get forms of both. We could always get it in Europe. Now you can starting to get some of it in South America. So we are, I would say, we were forced to be, just as everybody was, like with the hybrid work environment, we were forced to innovate in the context of not being able to send people scouting. And so I'm not saying that we're not gonna scout in the future. In fact, we have started to send our scouts abroad again. But I do think that our model's gonna be different, and we're gonna be more data reliant, we're gonna be more video reliant, and then maybe that in-person appearance is more the personal touch. It's, hey, what kind of personality does this player have? Does he fit with our locker room? Because if you step back, and again, I've been doing this for 14, 15 years, and it's kind of this, it's not an aha moment because it's something that's pretty common sense and kind of right in front of your face. But when you send a scout out, if you look at it with hindsight now, right, they're going to go watch one game of a guy who's playing a 20 or 30 game season, right? So it kind of doesn't make that much sense because that scout would inevitably, by the nature of him going to watch that game, is going to weight that game, that outcome, right? But if you're trying to build an objective evidence-based model, it doesn't make a lot of sense to base any evaluation on one game. So again, I think with that as our foundation now, I think it changes how we do our in-person scouting. And again, it doesn't eliminate it, but it makes it hopefully a little smarter and a little bit more strategic, and again, supported holistically within the club with data analysis, video analysis.
There's a level of efficiency to, going and meeting a player. But watching a player, to Garth's point, we'll typically put that farther down the line now. I mean, I can, from my office 2 days ago, I was watching a U19 game out of Europe. And we have access to so many things now. And so going to meet a player is important. And the truth is that instance that Garth is referring to, where you go watch a player and fall in love with them, the summer camp crush, as I like to call it, you've got to vet that all the way out. And, the beginning of that now is that live moment. You might go watch a game to make sure to have that personal moment with a player you're already interested in and spot someone else. But that's the beginning of the adventure with that next player, not the end. You're not trying to rediscover or mine anything in that moment as much as you're trying to wrap another evolution of a player signing up.
Are you getting more, access to video and those kind of things to make your job of, kind of scouting and recruiting, better?
I wouldn't say we're getting more access, Mickey, in the sense that Y Scout's a product that's been out there for 5-6 years. And, I think I've said this in the past, but I mean, we can get every touch for every game in the world within 24 hours. It's amazing. I mean, anything that you want, you can get. Anything that's streamed or televised anywhere. So the problem becomes inverse of what it was 5 or 6 years ago. There you always had to seek out those information sources. Now you have so much information, and this is where the data stuff comes in, is you have to have screens because you have so much coming in input. You got to be able to identify the things that you feel are key metrics, key indicators, because otherwise your talent evaluators will waste all their time on, kind of scatter plot of, thousands of players that are coming across the desk.
I could go one more. Let me go one more just to give someone else a shout out here. All the technology tools and everything, there's also something that we use called Metrica. Jorge, our video analysis guy that we re-signed, he can take any game in the world, he can code it for us, especially for me and my job as coaches. And then we have set things that we want to see as a coaching staff or every touch or whatever. He puts it into Metrica, and then we can watch that game and say, okay, I want to see this, and this for that particular player. So Jorge can do all that for us as well, to be really specific for any situation that you can think of on the field.
And I'll go even one layer beyond that. I'm really happy you highlighted Jorge. He's a really key guy that we've been able to retain going forward. And so, Matt, you asked how do we solve the Ravi. So Ravi ran our analysis department. And if you guys have been here for a long time, that started out that sports science was under that umbrella, and Ravi actually started underneath sports science. And then Ravi got so good and the data got good, so we created an analysis department. And video is a subset of that. But now, with Jorge, we have this super talented video analysis. So now we're going to have a video department. So we're going to have a data department, a sports science department, a video department. And again, as you get more information, more inputs, you simply have to do it. Each one of those things expands. So now, again, that helps us solve the Ravi departure. It helps us give Jorge more support. And again, it's a holistic solution to these challenges as we move forward in the ever-changing world.
Greg, do you want to tell us who you're watching, the 19-year-old?
I'd love to, but it just slipped in my mind. The
Fair
name,
enough.
yeah, I just remember it was European somewhere, I forget.
Somewhere across the pond.
Yeah.
Garth, I just want to go back, just when in the meeting you had about MLS, I think you said the directors from Europe, what were some of those attributes that they were looking for from an MLS player going forward, just in general?
Yeah, look, and every club is still different, right? I don't want to paint with the burst the European teams need, but one of the things they said was like, look, stereotypically, American players were viewed as rah-rah guys, guys that were going to give consistent effort, no matter what, never give up, fight. And what they said on the call yesterday was, now we're seeing some skill. Now we're seeing some tactical acumen. We're seeing some, and again, it's not an accident. I mean, like, this is what the U.S. soccer's been working on, and all the MLS teams have been working on, and this is I've said in other places, like, this is an unsexy investment. This is an infrastructure investment, right? And we have had the benefit of having great ownership, and this is something that nobody sees, but this is critical. Like, you pump money into youth development. We're 7 years in now, right? It's like it's a research and development expense, and it may there's nothing there that you're going to see, that you're going to point to, that's going to say, oh, that was it, or that was the right investment. But you make all these investments over time, and then you gradually create better players. Then those players make a bigger impact. They do that across the league. The league increases its reputation, and now it's all part of this virtual cycle now of you get a couple of good sales, and now more people watch your league. That drives your ratings. And on and on and on. And look, I think that's the path for MLS. If you talk about, we haven't talked about some of the kind of biggest thing coming is we hope to learn in the spring that Seattle's been named a host city for the 2026 World Cup. That is going to be a massive shot in the arm for our city, for our community, if we're able to, be named that. And it's going to be a massive shot in the arm for our sport to host the World Cup and to host it with Canada and with the United States and Mexico. And so you talk about competitions like Leagues Cup and like what that could be. That's amazing. Nobody's pulled that off anywhere else in the world. If we're able to have a month-long competition between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, 3 massive countries in the run-up to the World Cup, I mean, these are incredibly exciting things, and that's just going to spur more people to watch and more kids to try soccer and more good athletes to come into the pipeline. And, you can tell I get fired up about some of the long-term stuff, but it's a really good time to be in our sport. It's a really good time to be in some of these development spaces because it's going to get better. The tide is rising, and it's going to lift all the boats, and you just got to make sure your boat doesn't have a lot of holes.
Craig, this is going to be your first primary transfer window. Normally, like when you were the GM at RSL, for Garth, fans would say that a primary transfer window is successful by signing a DP or something like that. All of your attention, though, has been, so far today, has been on youth development. So how do you what's your stamp going to be kind of in this primary transfer window? Is it going to be something that we see 3 years down the road when a guy that was on a Defiance contract last year is a first-team player, or is that something that you can?
No, it won't be. It's not limited. This year I think there was an emphasis on it just because the level of youth talent that was available, but also how the staff developed them. I think, my entry into the group was well into the preseason and just before the regular season started. So from a roster standpoint, a lot of the heavy lifting had already been done. Like Garth said earlier and Brian mentioned earlier, there's still a lot of conversations going on. So we're not exactly sure where the heavy lifting is for the offseason for a little while longer here until all these conversations kind of, come to fruition, so to say. But my goal isn't and never has been. I'm not an ego-driven guy. I don't need the attention. I'm part of the process. And it's sitting down with the staff, sitting with Garth, and really identifying where do we need to be in 2 to 3 years, and how do we get there. And we have a lot of really talented players. I think, with the 3 best 11s this year, we now have 5 best 11 quality players on the roster. I think there's another 4 or 5 all-stars on the roster. There's a crop of young developing talent. My goal is not to draw attention to myself by feeling that there needs to be a huge statement, but there will be holes. It's the evolution. Hopefully we're developing players And hopefully at some point, we're selling players. But that evolution comes from consistently winning, consistently training these guys to put them in situations where they improve. So, I always have a long-term vision. That's part of our role in the front office. I always joke that the front office's job is to win in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and Brian's job is to win on Saturday. It's a hefty balance to play between, but in terms of development, in terms of signing, we'll see exactly where we are, I think, in the next 6-7 days. I don't think there's gonna be any massive dramatic needs in terms of designated players, in terms of those measures that you referred to, especially with the current roster we have, but I will say it's a lot of fun to have those. That's why I like this job and this position is when those needs come up, it's a lot of fun to go out and try and solve them and hear what the resources we have, the video, the structure we have with Jorge and with Ravi, and there's a lot of resources and a lot of really, really smart people. It's a lot of fun to show up every day and work with this group, and we'll nail down the best available options when we get there.
And Dave, sorry, real quick, Felipe, he's also being really modest because Leo Chu was his signing. That was all his legwork. Craig was on board, Sean Henderson supporting him. And to be clear, nobody up here thinks that Leo Chu isn't a high-value prospect, all right? Whatever the struggles with finding a way to get him on the field, the kid had a goal and 2 assists and 150 minutes of playing time. There's potential there. We think that kid could be really good. And again, you can bring him along in a measured manner and still believe in his long-term potential. So I just don't want to lose that thread, Dave, that we did make a DP signing this season. Craig should get credit for that. And I think you guys are going to see, that is one that you're going to see pay off, I think, over the next couple of years.
A lot of players take time to adjust. Brian will be the first to tell you that. Players that come in the midsummer, you usually see them in MLS specifically play well after their next preseason. Hopefully that's what we see a little more with Leo, but he's also young. You're adding on to the challenges. He's not a 27-year-old veteran from another country that came in mid-season and this is his first move out of his native country, and we're seeing that transition culturally. He's done a great job transitioning and fitting in terms of the culture of that locker room and what I've seen. Brian gets him on the field every day, and the kid works hard for these guys, and so compliments to the staff for getting it out of him too.
So Coach Brian, you changed the formation of the team this season. How was the process of changing from one formation to another one? Did you wake up one day and say, I'm going to change the formation, or you look up to your staff, look at the players? How was the process of changing something that is not easier for any?
Well, the process is always, for me anyway, the same. So we take the group of players that we have and we figure out the best way how to put them on the field, not just in a formation, but who plays with whom, and how do we need everyone over the course of a long season, the demands of every week and midweek games and extended games and different tournaments, open cups, all of that. It's all one big process. I wouldn't say that I woke up one day and said, we're going to change. But there is, when Jordan's injury happened, I think that was the one event that really pushed us towards a change for this year. And so now he is back and healthy, and we have Leo, and we have Nico coming back, and, having, that familiarity with 4-2-3-1, it's something that we're thinking about for next season. Having said that, again, we'll just wait till all the final pieces are together, and then we'll make a final decision.
Brian, with CONCACAF coming up and the MLS season starting in late February, what's the timeline for guys who aren't away on duty, say like a Kushner or Jordan? When do you need to get them back into their Starflyer? How much of an offseason do they actually have this year?
Well, they're guaranteed an off-season based on the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. They do need some mental rest and physical rest. I mean, it's been a long couple of years, I would say, with the COVID and everything. It's been a grind. If you look at our kind of little path, I know it's a very small sample size, but we did well in 16, 17, lost to Portland and got back after it in 19, 20, and now we're down. We'll hopefully be able to rejuvenate a little bit the mind and the legs, and obviously use the loss to RSL as motivation. And we'll give them time off. We'll start again in mid-January. We're still piecing together what preseason actually looks like. And, you know, we'll get back after it.
You referenced the cycles there, you know, where you win a championship in 16, you lose the championship in 17, and then the first round exit in 18. Same 2-3 year cycles have just gone back to back. Is that weird at all in your mind at all?
Well, I'll let you guys decide if that's weird. I mean, it's a fact, it's a factual sequence, but again, it's a very small sample size. I mean, look, in 18, when we lost to Portland, that one was a gut check. Christian got injured in that game down in Portland, and Chad Marshall got the injury as well. And, you know, I thought 18 was a really good team. I thought we could have gone, you know, far there. This year we had a really good team. You know, it's unfortunate we ran into the, you know, team that's the hottest team now in RSL. So there's different reasons for those events and those records, but it is something for you guys to write about.
Garth, you've been so successful at your job, and the one objective you haven't gotten, if I remember when we first saw you in a press conference, was getting an international title. You were one game away from getting this cup. What do you have to do you think, from your position, to maybe get that objective?
Look, I think you always have to put the club first, Nico. And to be clear, you're absolutely right. And it's one of the first things I said is, you know, because look, the Sounders had won pretty much everything when I got here, right? So I gotta try to find something they hadn't done yet. So, you know, trying to find international tournaments and stuff. And, you know, fortunately we've had those of us up here collectively have had the success of winning a couple MLS Cups, and that's been rewarding. But look, you have to be sensible as well, Nico, and you have to look up at the composition of your roster, and you have to build sensibly in terms of the goals for the season. So, you know, as Coach Schmetzer says, and I love it, I agree with it, you know, we're going to try to win every competition we enter. He saw us put maximum effort into the Leagues Cup again this year. We'll put maximum effort into the Champions League. But we got to be sensible about that as well. The issue, Jackson, to kind of go back to where you were, is I talked to a bunch of the Galaxy guys as we started getting into this and reflecting them reflecting back on 11, 12, and 14 when they won. And what they told us was the third year is really tough. And it's not a question of going to the finals, not going to the finals, win, lose. It's just mileage. It's going so deep in the playoffs, doing it again, and then having a 4-week off season or a 6-week off season. And you can recover and you can overcome in different individual players. But like, one of the things that we saw at the end of this season was our staff was tired. They were mentally really, really fatigued. And again, we've got a really good staff. And these are folks that do not complain. But, you know, it is a thing. COVID happens. It's still happening. Please get vaccinated. Please get boosted. But our staff, it's a lot of work. Like, literally every single day, we have to come in and make sure everyone is safe and healthy, and that no one is in here and no one's in here, and we're wearing our masks and we're eating the right way. And it takes a toll, man. Over 2 years of traveling on the road, MLS is back, all the things that the guys went through. So we do need a break right now. We collectively, our staff, our players, we do need some time to go home, see family, you know, be safe, be relaxed, get away from soccer a little bit. And that's what I mean then, Nico, when we come back to Champions League, hopefully we come back rejuvenated and ready, but we got to listen to our people at the same time, and we got to take the club's best interest over, you know, an individual goal that maybe one of us might have in the long term.
So, Garth, on that token then, what constitutes a successful offseason for you?
It's hard to say, Jackson, just because we have more free agents than we've had in the past. So, you know, we have, you know, 5 or 6 guys that we just don't know yet right now. Are they coming in? Are they coming out? So look, I mean, if we lose 6 and we got to sign 6, then, you know, you're going to see some churn there. One of the things that, from a roster building standpoint, Coach touched on the winning culture, right? Like, we got players like Kellen Rowe came back. Kellen Rowe called me and Brian and at the time Chris Henderson and was like, you guys should put me on your team. And I hadn't really had a call like that before, right? And he's like, no, really, you should put me on the team. And we're like, all right, it's pretty charming. Federal Way guy. He's calling us from his parents, by the fireplace and his hearth and stuff. And, and we're like, okay, let's sign Kellen. And, and Freddie Montero, pretty similar. He wants to come back home. He's got his coffee shop here. Has a young family. Like, all right, let's sign Freddie Montero. So the club really made those signings. The culture of the club, the success of the club. Obviously, having a great head coach helps in that regard as well. Somebody that people want to play for. But that is something that we got to look to continue as well, Jackson. To see, can we use our culture to our advantage to remain a destination where people want to play. And so, look, goals for the offseason are simply. We got a good thing going. I mean, just again, reflect for a second on what Craig said a second ago. We have 5 guys who have been best 11 in the last 2 years. We have another 5 guys who have been all-stars and are full internationals for their countries. That's not bad. Like it's okay as a starting point. There are worse problems to have, and we got a bunch of talented guys coming through. Like we got a bunch of good things in place. And if we can just again put the club first, keep that stability, be calm, work through our contract processes, and then try to give Brian as many weapons as we can going into next year and do it in a sustainable manner. Because it is once we get going, man, it is going to be compressed. It's going to be intense. It's got to all be done. The regular season ends in October again, a month earlier than this year. So we're going to have to be ready. But I think we're, in terms of the next week or so, I think it's a little bit take it as it comes and see where we are, and it's a long-winded way of me taking no responsibility whatsoever for the offseason.
We're expecting an announcement.
Mickey, before you go, let's probably wrap it up. We're a little bit over an hour, so 1 or 2 more, and then if we need side scrums, let us know, and then we'll coordinate. Mickey, go ahead.
We're expecting an announcement early next week about the new MLS LDL lower division league venture. You talked a little bit about how it's going to be not too different from the USL, but could you talk about some of the differences you are expecting as far as roster construction, investment, things like that?
Sure. Well, look, first of all, I appreciate Alex looking out for my lunchtime. I do get hungry. But at the same time, I'm happy to stay up here, guys. We only get to do this once a year, so we're having fun. In terms of the lower division league, man, I don't think it's going to be that different. Maybe you're playing maybe it's not all at Cheney, maybe some at Cheney. There's some details that we got to work out. But certainly we want to be in Tacoma, and we want to be in the community, and we're going to keep looking for places where we can support the Sounders and grow our fan base. And in terms of the guys, I think it's going to be a very similar team talent-wise. I think the staff is going to be the same. We have, I think at my last count, I think there are likely to be 21 teams based on the last information I saw. I mean, don't hold me to that. That's not in stone, but that's what we're looking at. And so you're going to play the teams on the West Coast probably a little bit more often than the teams in the middle of the country on the East Coast. And, one of the exciting things I think about that structure is I think you're going to be able to work in, you're going to have some open weekends where you can maybe play international competition. So maybe we're heading down to Mexico and playing a couple games there. Maybe there are leagues. I mean, again, every league in the world is trying to do this, right? Whether it's the Bundesliga, EPL, France, all these leagues are trying to develop young players now. It's very much a global marketplace, and so there's a real opportunity for some synergies and some exchanges now where we're sending players. I mean, one of these other things that's out there now is there are pre-pandemic at least. We'll see if they come back, but hopefully by next year we're through the pandemic enough to start staging international youth tournaments again. But if you come back to this U19, U21 international tournament footing, you might see us send our top prospects from Defiance in a kind of all-star team to go play 3 or 4 games in front of, scouts from all over Europe or, scouts from all over South America kind of thing. So what I really like about this structure is we're going to have a season, we're going to have a champion. I think it's something we're going to be really competitive in, but we have these other opportunities now as well where we can be nimble and we can be innovative, I think, and we can try to put our kids in the most dynamic competitions possible to further their development.
One of the things about the Reserve League that some people said kind of like minds, it's just you were playing in small training fields in front of very few fans. It was tough to watch the games. Is the infrastructure going to be such that fans will be able to watch these games, and how will you guys handle that?
I don't expect any change on that either, Mickey. I think it's gonna be, similar venues, certainly to what's been used in the past. I expect there to be broadcasting standards, the same as there have been in the past. I think every game is gonna be streamed. Hopefully it's, there's, whether that's continuity of the ESPN Plus specifically or not, I think that's TBD. But, this is something where, again, one of the biggest things for us is that we make sure that our players are on all these scouting services, right? We talked about why scout in the context of we can get any touch from any game anywhere in the world with 24 hours. Well, it's true for our players too, right? So we're going to be darn sure that we have all of our games that are streamed and are on TV so that they then get uploaded into those servers so that every scout in the world can watch our guys just as we are watching all those other kids. So it's a really important point. But again, I think it's going to be, I don't think the public is going to notice any difference in terms of how the Defiance is presented going forward.
Hey, Brian, just Ezra Hendrickson got the job to cover fireman. If you talk to him, one of your buddies, just thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah. Really happy for Ezra. Really happy. It's a great opportunity for him. It's a big market. Chicago's a big town, big expectations, so we talked about that, and he's super, super excited about this opportunity. Deservedly so. He's been around the league as a player and as assistant, started off S2 at the time here at our club, so really, really happy for Ezra.